Hello, welcome to For Your Review. I'm Ross Martin. This is Scott Birmingham, and we're welcoming you back after a couple weeks. You're
Well, nice to be here.
kind of on vacation the last couple weeks. We haven't seen him in a while, so.
Well, it's great to
Welcome
be
back.
here. How's it been going with you, Ross?
Good.
Good. Well, today's an exciting episode in a way because we got to see a film that's earlier playing in the week. So being able to talk about it only 2 days after the fact is exciting for us.
Yeah, a lot nicer.
So, well, let's talk a little bit about this. Is George Clooney's film. In fact, he serves as one of the producers on it. It's called The American. Some mixed reactions out there. Why don't we just go ahead and kickstart it and tell me what your gut feeling was after watching this film.
That was all right. I mean, it wasn't great. I think it's a plot that's been done a bunch of times. It's kind of, he plays an assassin, a hitman who kind of messes up his last job, and he's sent to Castelvecchia, Italy, to kind of hide out for a while and do one last job, and then he wants out. He wants out of the business, which we've seen I don't know how many times before. And it really reminded me of a movie called In Bruges that came out a couple years ago. I was talking to you about this. It's got its differences, but the plot is pretty much the exact same. For a movie that came out 2 years ago, I think this one could have done a lot differently. I think the script was a little weak. Not a whole lot of dialogue, which is fine, but I don't think there was enough plot development throughout the whole thing.
Well, there's two things to me. The top two tiers that make a really great or/slash memorable film. One is the story. Well, one is it's really hard to do a story that has yet to be told because they've all been told in some form or another. So the very next one is, well, how do you tell your story then? How do you separate yours? How do you make it with your personal stamp and uniqueness? So your storytelling of maybe a story that's been told millions of times, obviously, as you just pointed out. The very first thing that I thought about this film is I was lucky I stayed awake.
Yeah.
It's an extremely slow-paced film. I mean, for me, waiting for paint to dry would just be a little bit more interesting because I could at least shift and move the chair somewhere else in the room to watch.
Are you saying you didn't get enough of George Clooney doing push-ups and pull-ups?
I tell you, I am. And don't get me wrong, I am all for the slow-paced movies. So that's not what bugged me. Well, it did with this one, but by and large, the idea of it being slow-paced isn't what bugs me. I love taking in the photography, getting the layout of the location.
The cinematography was excellent. That's the best part of the film for me because it was directed by a photographer, a longtime photographer who's basically world renowned, and his directing is good. The cinematography is excellent. All the locations are beautiful, and it was shot very well. It's just like you're saying, the story doesn't really move.
When you're given that much time, you tend to pay attention to other things. It forces you to. Is this a character study? You think
they're trying to make it a character study, but it's almost they don't get to it.
You're more apt to study more things about the film, and maybe even sometimes the flaws that are associated with it. It's like waiting for the doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
And you're just picking up everything in the room, including the receptionist, and watching what she does. But after a while, I mean, you're just sitting there. You got to do something.
See, that's one thing that kind of bothered me. It seemed like there were just too many random scenes that were just thrown in. Like I was saying, like with him doing push-ups in his room, you think, okay, something's going to happen. They cut to the next scene, and there's a scene of him sleeping, and he wakes up all of a sudden and points the gun at the wall. Then next scene, there's just a bunch of random scenes that don't go anywhere, no dialogue.
And there are films, I could think of a handful of Sergio Leone films that by themselves that make the very environment their character, and there is a certain beauty in capturing that. I feel once you've established that, buddy, move on, do something.
Yeah.
And this film I was kept on waiting for that moment that it would start breaking pace, and probably about 1:30 is when it started happening. I mean, that's what it felt like, and I felt a little betrayed by the trailers because the way that the trailers are built up sets a certain tone about what you might expect out of this film. And even the poster, gives you that 70s espionage thriller feel to it that you remember out of the older James Bond and French films, which were great. I mean, they had great stories and they were great to follow. So I felt like I was kind of like a bait and switch was done on me here.
I was reading online, a couple people were calling it Jason boring.
It was sad. The film just doesn't deliver on that end of it. Again, it's slowly paced without, and this is without the payoff that you get for laboring so much time into it.
See, that's what I was gonna say. Like, you're saying it's a slow-paced movie, and you were bored throughout. But for me, I was awake and entertained throughout because I was, okay, something's gonna happen. I was waiting for that big moment to happen. So throughout the whole thing, I was thinking this is good. There's gonna be some plot coming up. There's gonna be some twists. And by the end of it, there's really nothing. So looking back on it, I'm thinking, yeah, it was kind of boring because when you're watching it, you're thinking, okay, something's going to happen. They're going to make some of this scene. They're going to make some of this character, but ultimately they don't. And I wouldn't watch it again because of that.
Well, and I feel it had a lot of the ingredients to make it even a little bit more cat and mouse, the way it was done. It's almost like we're going to put the story on the back burner. We're going to really focus on a lot of shots of George Clooney out in the countryside, out in Italy, getting to know the peeps. He's talking to them. You're getting an idea of what he does. In fact, there's a lot of gray areas. Like, I'm thinking, well, he knows how to put the gun together, and he knows how to sell it, and he knows some places. But as far as tying it all together and going towards a sense of direction of someplace, I think it fell flat. Yeah. And you do get a little, don't get me wrong, George Clooney, I enjoy his acting. But after a while, I'm ready for something else when I was watching this movie. It also made me question the editing. We were talking about Scott Pilgrim, about how well edited that film was, and the material that they had to work with. And in this one, it really makes you, because a lot of the shots that are really laid out, a lot of static shots in the film of the countryside, laying out the feel of it, you wonder, well, did they not have enough stuff to cut together to put a story together? That was my thing. And I think Clooney does a nice, quiet job. This is a nice little vacation film for him, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not really a dialogue-driven film. I went with my friend Royce, and he said afterwards, he's like, I think George Clooney probably had 3 lines of dialogue throughout the entire film. And I'm like, yeah, I'd agree with that.
If the overall film would have been better, that wouldn't have bothered me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have minded that at all, but it never went anywhere for me. In fact, the most touching, if you will, touching point that I thought there was some substance to it was the point where he's getting a date with the girl who he sees like once a month, and there's some romance going on there. That was about the closest that I felt like, well, something is happening here. There is some dialogue. How much time went by here to get to this point? I give it, and out of my 4-star, I would give it 1, 2, man, really weak on my meter. I'm disappointed. I was disappointed as an overall film that it was as weak as it was.
I think I liked it a little more than you, but I wasn't that impressed with it. Again, because of like In Bruges, the entire time that's all I could think of. And just every single plot point has already been done, especially for a movie that was made a couple of years ago. And what kind of bothered me about it is, like, I was interested to kind of watch, this character, George Clooney's guy, who isn't really named Jack Edward. They call him a couple different things in the movie. It was interesting enough to watch him for the hour and 45 minutes the movie ran. But I think where the movie failed is the fact that I didn't really care what happened to him before the movie, and I don't care what happened to him after.
And that's an important thing to talk about, because in your anticipation of waiting for something to happen, and characters are coming in and characters are going, it's an important question to pose. Do I really care?
Yeah.
It's not, it's not going anywhere for me. As you said, they throw in these long static shots, well photographed, I think. In fact, I think the palette was a little bleak for me.
Yeah.
I think it could have been far more colorful, at least eye candy to look at. I don't even think this was that interesting. Some of the most visually interesting stuff is him putting the gun together.
Yeah, it's interesting to see him put the gun
together. And if
together,
that's the most exciting part of the film, Ross, give me a break.
Yeah, the gun was cool, though.
The gun was cool.
Did you hear the sound of that thing?
It was great. Them going out to the yard and shooting it.
Submachine gun / rifle /
it's just
a big ass silencer.
It's a movie I would definitely not have paid to go see again.
Yeah, I'd probably.
And I think if you were a die-hard George Clooney fan and must see everything that he's in, even this could wait for DVD to watch. And you might want to fast forward through some stuff because it's not all that engaging. Having said that, and there wasn't a whole lot of information online about The American, which I thought was surprising.
Very smaller movie.
The American received a mixed early response from critics, garnering a 60% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, with the consensus being, quote, as beautifully shot as it is emotionally restrained. The American is an unusually divisive spy thriller and one that rests on an unusually subdued performance from George Clooney. Might be a little bit overrated comment, I think, for a film like this. Let's take a look at a clip and then go ahead.
I saw Roger Ebert give it 4 stars.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm very surprised by him.
Throw that out there. Yeah.
He's got a cookbook coming out too. I think that's his new focus in life.
Anyway,
let's take a look at a scene from The American, and probably all their clips are much better than the movie.
Who was the girl?
A friend.
A friend?
Who are the Swedes?
I'm working on that. It's going to take some time. Did she set you up?
She had nothing to do with it.
Pity. You can't stay here. I've made arrangements for you to leave town while I sort this out.
Well, it seems a bit since The American has gotten a couple days head start, and the film we're going to talk about next week is Robert Rodriguez's 14th film. His next film is another one of the Spy Kids movies.
His last one came out a month ago.
I'm telling you.
This guy's just turning out.
But it's Machete. So they're wondering how Machete and The American
You gotta say it right. You gotta say it like they do in the trailers. Machete.
Machete.
There you go.
All right. That's how would Robert Rodriguez say it?
That's
the
how he
question.
would
Was
say
that
it.
how he would say it?
Kind of the ethnic style.
Oh, man, listen to you. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about next week, Machete, and we're going to see how it does with The American. I have a feeling that The American is just going to tank so heavy.
Yeah.
I think they're going to get all the diehard Clooney fans out there, and they're going to want to watch just some more ER episodes is what they're going to want to watch.
Yeah.
Anyway, next week it's Machete. Ross and I will come back to you with that review. Until then, I'm Scott Birmingham with Ross Martin, and this is For Your Review.
The jingle jangle of pennies in your pocket because the scavengers, the leeches, the parasites are walking away with your money while you're left with the change. So I want to say one more thing. Who are you going to vote for?